Let's hit the ground running. Society acts like turning 40 is just, an excuse to buy a fancy sports car or have a mini freakout. But financially, it is literally the mathematical halftime of your existence. And for most people, it's actually a massive trap. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're tearing down the brutal reality of the midlife squeeze and how you can actually beat it. Look, right now, your future is splitting into two very different realities. In one, you're making decent money, maybe 70 grand a year, but you are constantly stressed. You're drowning in payments, and a single check engine light on your dashboard is enough to send you into a complete panic. But the other reality? That version of you is totally free. A broken down car is just a minor annoyance, not a financial disaster. You sleep soundly. You actually have options. So what's the actual difference here? It isn't trust funds, and it's definitely not luck. It is a completely invisible tripwire that catches incredibly smart, hardworking people off guard every single day. Today, we're going to lay out the exact blueprint to make sure you step right over it. All right, part one, the hedonic treadmill trap. Here's a crazy psychological glitch. Most people spend their 20s and 30s randomly upgrading their lifestyle, but they ignore the number 3. It takes your brain exactly 3 months to get totally used to a brand new luxury. 3 months. You upgrade to that gorgeous new apartment and it feels amazing. But 90 days later, it's just drywall. The thrill is totally gone. But guess what? That massive rent increase? Yeah, that is permanent. This phenomenon is called hedonic adaptation. You are literally sprinting on a treadmill, burning all your energy, but going nowhere. If you want to escape this 40-year trap, you have to snap out of it. You need to ruthlessly cut spending on the stuff you don't actually care about so you can go all in and spend aggressively on the few things that genuinely bring you joy. Which brings us right to section 2, the freedom tax. The absolute baseline defense here is carrying zero consumer debt. Zero. Think of credit card debt as a literal vampire living in your house, just slowly draining your financial life force. The math is honestly terrifying. If you carry just 20 grand in debt at 18%, you're going to spend 30 years paying it off. You will hand the bank over $40,000 just in pure interest. That is literally the price of your freedom, totally gone. And what if you actually need a mortgage? Just think about the difference between a 3% and a 4% interest rate on a $500,000 home. It sounds tiny, right? Just 1%. But that tiny difference costs you nearly 100 grand over the life of the loan. That is an entire college degree. This is exactly why treating an 800 credit score like it's a video game you absolutely have to win is mandatory before you hit 40. Okay, to protect that score, you need bowling lane bumpers. I'm talking about a solid, boring cash emergency fund. When you're 25 and lose your job, whatever, you sleep on a buddy's couch. When you're 40, you can't just wing it. 6 months of cash isn't just a safety net. It is pure leverage. It is the ultimate FU money that lets you walk away from a toxic boss without sweating. Moving on to section 3, the compounding escape velocity. So how do wealthy people actually buy their freedom early? It's a system called Coast Fire, and the math here is brutal but beautiful. If you can scrape together and invest 5 times your annual expenses by age 40, you can theoretically never put another dime into your accounts. Seriously. Thanks to compounding, $500,000 turns into over $3 million by 65, completely on its own. The heavy lifting is done forever. You basically cross an invisible threshold where your money is actually clocking in and working way harder than you are. Imagine waking up in your 40s knowing your retirement is completely handled. Suddenly, you have the ultimate superpower: choices. You want to take a pay cut to work a job you actually love, start that niche business? You can do it because the pressure is gone. But to get that kind of investment capital, you need serious leverage. Look, your 20s were for trying things out and making mistakes. But your 30s, that decade is purely for stacking career capital, rare skills, high-level relationships, and deep expertise. You have to become so undeniable that they have to pay you what you're worth. You need that massive earning engine running right when your family responsibilities hit their absolute peak. But actually, hold on. Let me ask you a question, and I really want you to think about this. What is your absolute most valuable financial asset? Is it your stock portfolio, your house, maybe your 401k? Here is the really uncomfortable truth. It's your physical body. Literally, your body is the biological machine that prints every single dollar of your income.
And yet, almost nobody looks at going to the gym as a wealth preservation strategy. But think about it. If the biological engine breaks down, every single financial plan we just talked about goes completely out the window.
Let's dive right into Section 4, the biological financial drain. By the time you hit your mid-30s, you aren't working out to look good on a beach anymore. You are training to avoid a terrifying cascade of medical costs. And speaking of biological realities, keep the numbers 10 and 12 in mind. If anyone relies on your income, you need term life insurance covering 10 to 12 times your annual expenses. For a healthy 35-year-old, a massive policy costs less than your Spotify and Netflix combined. It is the ultimate grown-up defense mechanism. Now, alongside all of this is a ticking clock I call the 70-40 rule. When your parents turn 70 or you hit 40, you have to have the incredibly awkward money talk. You need to get their estate planning and power of attorney locked down right now. Because if you don't, your family is going to end up playing a horrific game called probate court, which basically turns an already emotional crisis into a massive, drawn-out financial nightmare. And finally, Section 5, choosing your reality. Look, crushing your debt, hitting coast fire, treating your health like an investment, these aren't just fun little tips. They are the absolute minimum entry fee if you want to have any real choices in the second half of your life. So really ask yourself, which 40-year-old are you going to be? The one trapped by past obligations or the one empowered by options? Hope is not a strategy, guys. You have to build the blueprint. If this explainer shifted how you're looking at your future, make sure to follow along. We've got plenty more of these invisible traps to decode together.